The story of King David, the man after God's own heart. Our story begins long ago, during a time when kings and prophets lived among humanity. In the humble town of Bethlehem, nestled among verdant pastures and rolling hills, resided a young shepherd named David. He was the youngest of Jesse's sons, a man of esteem within the tribe of Judah. While his older brothers honed their skills in warfare, David dedicated his days to tending his father's flock. He guided them through the fields, shielded them from harm, and soothed their spirits with the melodies of his harp. Unbeknownst to many, the Almighty had a grand design for this unassuming shepherd. Amidst the tranquility of this rural landscape, God's divine plan was about to unfold in an unexpected manner. King Saul, the first ruler of Israel, had strayed from the path of righteousness, leading God to select a new king for his chosen people. To execute this divine decree, God dispatched the prophet Samuel, a man of unwavering belief and profound reverence, to anoint. Following divine directives, Samuel embarked on a journey to Bethlehem. The prophet's arrival generated quite a stir in the town, for everyone understood that Samuel's presence signified a momentous occasion. Upon reaching Jesse's abode, Samuel revealed his purpose. With a father's pride, Jesse presented his 7 eldest sons to the prophet. These were imposing figures, robust and tall. To mere mortals, they embodied the ideal image of kingship. However, God's perspective transcends human judgment. Samuel's gaze fell upon Eliab, the eldest, and he assumed this was the chosen one. One after another, Jesse's sons were scrutinized by Samuel, yet none received divine favor. Perplexed, Samuel inquired if these were all of Jesse's sons. Jesse answered, "I still have the youngest, who is looking after the sheep." At Samuel's behest, they summoned David. Thus, David, a young man with calloused hands, piercing eyes, and an unblemished soul, was summoned from the fields. It's likely he was both astonished and intrigued, unaware that the destiny of the Israelite kingdom was about to end. As Samuel laid eyes on David, the divine voice declared, "Rise and anoint him. This is he." In that profound instant, Samuel took the horn, filled with sacred oil, and anointed David in the presence of his siblings. From that day forward, the Spirit of the Lord empowered David. This consecration, as the future king of Israel, not only marked the commencement of his extraordinary path, but also stood as a testament to God's inclination to elevate the humble to achieve his grand objectives. David resumed his shepherding duties, but his spirit was forever changed, prepared for the path laid out by his Creator. Countless lessons awaited him, along with numerous conflicts, but fortified by God's anointing, he was destined to become one of Israel's most exceptional monarchs, a true man after God's own heart. Israel still found itself under King Saul's rule when a formidable threat emerged, menacing God's chosen people. The Philistines, fearsome adversaries, established their encampment on one hillside, while the Israelite army assembled on the opposing rise. In the valley that separated them, a colossal warrior named Goliath emerged as the Philistine champion, issuing a challenge that would reverberate through time. Goliath was a colossus of a man, almost 3 meters tall. His bronze armor, polished to a blinding sheen, reflected the sun's rays. His spear, thick as a weaver's beam, and his enormous shield, carried by a squire, added to his imposing presence. For 40 days, from dawn till dusk, Goliath strode towards the Israelite lines, his voice booming a challenge. "Send out a man to fight me. If he triumphs, we will be your servants. But if I prevail, you shall be our slave." Terror shackled the hearts of the Israelite soldiers, even King Saul himself. None dared to confront the formidable giant. It was then that David, a young shepherd, arrived at the encampment to deliver provisions to his brothers serving in the army. Upon hearing Goliath's taunts, David was enraged. How could this uncircumcised Philistine have the audacity to challenge the armies of the one true God? David possessed no formal combat training, unlike his brothers and fellow soldiers, yet he harbored an unwavering belief in God, a quality absent in the others. David approached King Saul, offering to face Goliath. Saul, initially hesitant, questioned David's capabilities, but David's response resonated with confidence, recounting how God had rescued him from the jaws of lions and bears while tending his father's flock. Granted Saul's approval, David declined the king's armor, finding it cumbersome and restrictive. He chose instead his sling, a humble weapon he had mastered since childhood. From the nearby stream, he selected 5 smooth stones, placing them in his shepherd's bag. Clutching his sling, David advanced towards the battlefield. Goliath, observing the approaching youth, burst into mocking laughter. "Am I but a dog," he roared, "that you come at me with mere sticks?" Undeterred, David, his voice filled with courage and faith, retorted, "You come against me armed with sword, spear, and shield, but I come against you in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of Israel's armies, whom you have defied." With these words, David sprinted towards Goliath. He drew a stone from his bag, loaded it into his sling, and launched it with lethal precision. The stone hurtled through the air, finding its mark squarely in Goliath's forehead, sinking deep into his skull. The giant swayed, collapsing face first onto the ground with a resounding thud. David dashed towards Goliath, seized the fallen giant's sword, and decapitated him, securing Israel's victory. David's valorous deed turned the tide of the battle. Witnessing their champion vanquished by a mere shepherd, the Philistines scattered in disarray. The Israelite army pursued them, securing a decisive victory. Across Israel, David was hailed as a hero. His unwavering faith and his bravery in the face of overwhelming odds transformed him into a beacon of hope and strength. This triumph marked the beginning of David's ascent, not just as a legendary warrior, but as a leader who placed his complete trust in the Lord. Within the tumultuous realm of battles and conspiracies that was the kingdom of Israel, a bond of friendship blossomed, one destined to be remembered as one of the strongest and most devoted ever chronicled. The bond between David and Jonathan, a friendship forged in unwavering loyalty, enduring even amidst profound adversity. Following his triumph over Goliath, David was escorted into King Saul's presence. It was during this encounter that David met Jonathan, Saul's eldest son. Jonathan, a prince and a formidable warrior in his own right, recognized in David's courage, faith, and humility deeply resonated with Jonathan, who shared these same virtues. From that day forward, Jonathan and David forged an unbreakable connection. Acknowledging David's exceptional qualities, Jonathan proposed a pact of friendship. To solidify this pact, Jonathan bestowed upon David his royal robes, his armor, his bow, and this act transcended mere symbolism of friendship. It was an acknowledgement of David's future kingship. Despite being the rightful heir to the throne, Jonathan perceived God's favor upon David and accepted this destiny with humility and grace. Their friendship thrived, even as tension and danger escalated around them. King Saul, initially filled with admiration for David, soon became consumed by envy and the dread of losing his throne. Repeatedly, Saul conspired to eliminate David. Time and again, David's life was spared thanks to Jonathan's loyalty and brotherly love. One of the most poignant demonstrations of their bond occurred when Saul, in a fit of rage, commanded David's execution. Jonathan, privy to his father's sinister plot, alerted David and devised a plan to expose Saul's true intentions during a court celebration. Jonathan discreetly tested Saul's disposition, and upon realizing his father's murderous intent, he raced to warn David. They met clandestinely in the fields. Tears streamed down Jonathan's face as he informed David of the imminent threat. They embraced, weeping openly, acutely aware of the peril and anguish their situation presented. Jonathan implored David to protect his family in times to come, reaffirming his unwavering commitment to their everlasting friendship. David vowed to do so, and they bid farewell. Uncertain, and they bid farewell, uncertain if fate would grant them another meeting. Despite their separation, their friendship remained steadfast. Jonathan continually interceded on David's behalf, striving to quell his father's fury, while David lived life as a fugitive, constantly avoiding danger. Throughout this tumultuous period, David cherished the memory of Jonathan's words and sacrifice, remaining true to his promise. Tragedy ultimately struck when Jonathan, alongside his father Saul, perished in battle against the Philistines. News of their demise shattered David. He was consumed by grief for his dearest friend, pouring out his sorrow into a lament that captured the profound depth of their bond and the magnificence of the friendship they had shared. David sang, "How the mighty have fallen in the midst of battle." Even in death, Jonathan's memory lived on. Upon ascending to the throne, David sought out Mephibosheth, Jonathan's surviving son, welcoming him into the palace and bestowing upon him the same love and care he would his own offspring. This act served as a testament to David's enduring loyalty and affection for Jonathan, a love that transcended both time and mortality, perpetuating the legacy of their extraordinary friendship. David and Jonathan's bond continues to resonate throughout history as a powerful testament to fraternal love, unwavering loyalty, and selfless sacrifice. While David had served King Saul loyally, he gradually became perceived as a mounting threat. This fear and animosity stemmed from the aftermath of David's celebrated victory over Goliath. As time went on, songs celebrating David's triumphs echoed throughout Israel. Saul has struck down his thousands, but David his tens of thousands. These pronouncements fanned the flames of Saul's insecurities and envy. The bond between David and Saul rapidly eroded, with Saul's jealousy morphing into paranoia. On multiple occasions, Saul even attempted to kill David with his spear, while David played his harp, attempting to soothe the king's troubled mind. Each failed attempt only intensified Saul's wrath and his conviction that David posed a direct threat to his throne. During one such episode, Saul commanded that David be brought to the palace and executed. However, Jonathan, Saul's son and David's closest confidant, intervened, persuading his father to spare David's life. Despite this temporary reprieve, Saul's heart remained unchanged. Shortly thereafter, he once again plotted David's demise. David, recognizing the imminent peril, resolved to escape with the help of his wife, Michal, who also happened to be Saul's daughter. David slipped away through their house window. To buy him time, Michal deceived Saul's soldiers by placing an idol in David's bed, making it appear as if he were indisposed. While Saul eventually saw through the ruse, David had gained precious time, successfully evading capture and embarking on a life as a fugitive. From that point forward, David was constantly in flight, perpetually one step ahead of Saul's pursuing soldiers. He sought refuge in unexpected places, including Philistine cities, territory of his former enemies, and the secluded recesses of mountain caves. One such cave, the Cave of Adullam, evolved into a sanctuary for David and a growing band of disaffected men, burdened by debt and discontent, who joined his cause, forming a steadfastly loyal army. During this time as a fugitive, David had two distinct opportunities to take Saul's life. The first arose in the cave of En-Gedi. Saul, unaware that David and his men were concealed within its depths, entered the cave seeking respite. However, instead of seizing this chance for vengeance, David stealthily approached Saul and cut off a piece of the king's robe. Even this act filled David with deep regret. He understood that despite having the perfect opportunity to eliminate his adversary, raising his hand against the Lord's anointed was a transgression he could not condone. As Saul exited the cave, David emerged, holding aloft the piece of cloth he had taken. Turning Saul saw David, who prostrated himself, his face touching the ground. David displayed the cut piece of Saul's robe, explaining, "Today, in this very cave, the Lord delivered you into my hands. Some urged me to strike you down, but I showed you mercy. I said, I will not raise my hand against." Upon hearing David's words and grasping the tangible proof of his mercy, Saul was overcome with emotion. Tears streamed down his face as he acknowledged David's righteousness, lamenting, "You are more righteous than I, for you have treated me well, even though I have treated you wickedly. This day you have demonstrated your goodness, for though I sought your life, you did not take mine. Know that you are destined to be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will be established under your rule." The second opportunity unfolded later, in the desolate expanse of the Ziph Desert. Once more, Saul was in pursuit of David, and as night fell, the king and his men made camp. David, accompanied by his nephew, Abishai, stealthily infiltrated the camp. Under the cover, they discovered Saul sound asleep, his spear planted firmly in the ground beside his head. Again, the allure of ending Saul's relentless persecution hung heavy in the air. Abishai whispered, "This is our chance. God has delivered your enemy into your hand. Allow me to pin him to the earth with a single thrust of his spear. I will not strike twice." Yet, unwavering in his faith and convictions, David refused. "Do not harm him," he commanded, "for who can lay a hand upon the Lord's anointed and remain blameless? As surely as the Lord lives," David declared, "it is the Lord who will strike him down when his time comes. Or he will die a natural death, or he will fall in battle." Instead of taking Saul's life, David claimed the king's spear and water jug, then quietly slipped away from the encampment. When they were a safe distance away, David called out to the commander of Saul's army, rousing everyone within the camp. He presented the spear and water jug as irrefutable evidence, proving once more that he could have ended Saul's life, but chose restraint. These acts of mercy transcended mere demonstrations of compassion. They were powerful testaments to David's integrity and his unwavering submission to the divine will. David understood that Saul's destiny rested in the hands of the Lord, not his own. His choice to spare Saul on these two occasions illuminated the true nature of his character, a heart attuned to God's will, valuing justice, compassion, and reverence for divine plans, above personal vendettas or the pursuit of power. David's actions left an unforgettable imprint on the course of Israel's history. They served as a beacon, demonstrating to all that a true leader derives strength from their trust in God's timing and justice, not from their own devices. David's unwavering clemency, therefore, serves as a timeless example of how faith and humility can triumph over hatred and the desire for revenge, illuminating the path for all who strive to walk in accordance with God's ways. The deaths of Saul and Jonathan marked a pivotal turning point in Israel's history, a moment steeped in both tragedy and transformation. It began during a fateful confrontation with the Philistines upon the slopes of Mount Gilboa. Saul, the first king of Israel, found himself locked in a desperate struggle to defend his kingdom. Fighting valiantly by his side was his son, Jonathan, David's staunch friend and unwavering ally. The battlefield raged, consumed by chaos and despair, as the Philistines, their military might evident, pressed their relentless assault. Saul, witnessing his men fall around him and acknowledging the bitter truth that defeat was inevitable, was grievously wounded by a barrage of arrows unleashed by the enemy. In a final act of desperation, seeking to avoid the humiliation of capture at the hands of the Philistines, Saul commanded his armor-bearer to end his life. The squire, paralyzed by fear, could not bring himself to comply. So with a heavy heart, Saul cast himself upon his own sword, choosing to end his own life. Jonathan, who had fought bravely alongside his father, also met his end amidst the carnage of that battle. News of Saul and Jonathan's deaths spread like wildfire, eventually reaching David, who was taking refuge in Ziklag, a city that had been granted to him by the Philistines during his period of exile. Upon hearing this devastating news, David was overcome with grief, tearing his clothes as a visible manifestation of his profound sorrow and mourning. He wept for Saul, the king who had relentlessly sought his life, and for Jonathan, his beloved friend and kindred. As a tribute to Saul and Jonathan, David composed a heartfelt elegy known as the Song of the Bow. Within its verses, David poured out his grief and paid homage to their memory, extolling their courage and their noble quality. He decreed that this song be taught to all the children of Judah, ensuring that the legacy of Saul and Jonathan would never fade. With Saul's passing, a void of leadership opened within Israel. The 12 tribes found themselves adrift, their ranks riddled with confusion and lacking a clear leader to guide them. David, recognized by many as the rightful heir apparent due to his anointing by the prophet Samuel years earlier, returned to Hebron, a prominent city within the territory of the tribe of Judah. There, the men of Judah assembled and formally anointed David as their king, marking the first stage in his ascension to the throne, initially reigning over Judah alone. However, Saul's lineage, led by his surviving son, Ish-bosheth, retained control over a portion of the kingdom, bolstered by the unwavering support of Abner, who had served as the commander of Saul's army. A period of conflict and rivalry ensued between the house of Saul and the burgeoning house of David. Yet, amidst this unrest, David demonstrated exceptional political acumen and military prowess, coupled with remarkable patience and an unwavering commitment to justice. Ultimately, Abner, wearied by the ongoing strife and recognizing the legitimacy of David's claim to the throne, made the momentous decision to switch allegiances. He initiated negotiations with David, seeking to unify the disparate tribes of Israel under David's rule. Tragically, before this vision could be fully realized, Abner was slain by Joab, the commander of David's forces, in an act of vengeance for the death of his brother. David, deeply grieved by Abner's untimely death, publicly mourned the fallen general, proclaiming that Abner had died a hero. When Ish-bosheth met his own demise at the hands of treacherous men seeking to curry favor with David, the path toward the reunification of the kingdom was finally clear. David, ever the just ruler, ensured that Ish-bosheth's assassins were brought to justice for their heinous act, reaffirming his steadfast commitment to righteousness and moral governance. Although driven into hiding by Saul's relentless pursuit, David found sanctuary and purpose in various places. But none proved as significant as the cave of Adullam. Nestled within a rugged, mountainous region, this natural fortress provided more than just physical security from external threats, including Saul's relentless pursuit. It became a crucible where loyalty was forged and a transformative community took root, laying the foundation for David's future reign. Falsely accused and facing imminent danger, David had fled for his life, finding himself utterly alone and seemingly helpless. But his solitude was short-lived. As word of his whereabouts spread, a steady stream of men from all corners of Israel made their way to the cave. See, these weren't seasoned warriors or powerful leaders, but ordinary people facing extraordinary hardships. They were the distressed, the indebted, those who had lost hope in the face of adversity and the increasingly oppressive reign of King Saul. Many were social outcasts, shunned and marginalized by society. Yet, in David, they saw something different, a leader who understood their plight, who had faced his own share of trials and emerged stronger. They arrived in small groups, their hearts heavy with their burdens, their hopes flickering like fragile flame. They brought with them a yearning for change, for justice, for a leader who would truly see them and fight for them. Within the cavernous embrace of the cave of Adullam, a remarkable transformation began to unfold. It buzzed with a newfound sense of purpose, as David, radiating natural leadership and a charisma that drew people to him, welcomed these weary souls. Instead of surrounding himself with seasoned soldiers, he opened his heart to these broken men and began to mold them and began to mold them into a cohesive force, a community bound by shared experiences and a common goal. David possessed an innate ability to connect with people on a deeply personal level. He listened with genuine empathy, acknowledging their pain, their fears, their frustrations. He shared his own struggles, reminding them that they weren't alone in their battles. Above all, he ignited within them a flicker of hope for a brighter future, a vision of a just and compassionate Israel where everyone had a place at the table. David's leadership transcended military strategy and battlefield tactics. He possessed a unique gift. He was a shepherd at heart, tending not only to the physical needs of his followers, but also to their emotional and spiritual well-being. He understood that true strength stemmed not merely from physical prowess, but from an unwavering spirit, fortified by faith and unwavering belief. Among the first to join David's ranks were his own family, his brothers, and all those who belonged to his father's household. They, too, feared for David's safety, recognizing that standing by his side was not only an act of loyalty, but also the most strategic and secure course. This unwavering family support formed a solid foundation, providing David with much-needed emotional support and further solidifying his role as their leader. Within the depths of the cave, an atmosphere of both rigorous military training and deep spirituality permeated the air. David, a skilled warrior in his own right, shared his knowledge, instructing his men in the art of combat and defense strategy. Using whatever rudimentary weapons were at their disposal, they trained relentlessly, learning to fight as a unified force, their individual strengths complementing each other. But their days weren't solely focused on physical preparations. Evenings found David leading by example in a different way. He shared stories of his own encounters with God's deliverance, recounting how his faith had been tested time and again, and how, against all odds, God had always remained faithful, providing a way out of seemingly impossible situations. He instilled in them the understanding that they weren't just fighting for land or power, but for a divine purpose, for the heart and soul of Israel. It was during this period, hidden away in the depths of the earth, surrounded by these unlikely warriors, that David penned many of the Psalms that continue to resonate with people of faith to this day. Through these poignant verses, he poured out his heart to God, giving voice to his anguish, his fears, his hopes, and above all, his unwavering trust in God's plan. The cave of Adullam became a hallowed space, a sanctuary where cries of despair transformed into songs of praise and declarations of faith. David's words, imbued with raw emotion and unwavering belief, reverberated off the cave walls, slowly transforming a place of refuge into a beacon of resistance. It became a crucible forging these ordinary men. Men arrived at the cave broken, desperate, their spirits crushed under the weight of their circumstances. But under David's guidance, they underwent a metamorphosis. They emerged from their self-imposed exile as courageous warriors, their hearts set ablaze with purpose, their loyalties firmly pledged to the man who had seen not their brokenness, but their potential. They became David's mighty men, valiant warriors who would later form the backbone of his army, their names etched in the annals of Israelite history as symbols of unwavering courage, unwavering loyalty, and unwavering faith. Within this unlikely setting, the damp confines of a cave, a legacy was born, alliances were forged that would forever alter the course of Israel's history. The cave of Adullam wasn't just a hiding place. It was a testament to the transformative power of shared adversity, unwavering faith, and exceptional leadership. It was a resounding declaration that greatness could emerge from the most unexpected of places, and that even in the darkest of times, hope could flourish. Throughout his time as a fugitive, David faced countless trials, testing his resilience and resolve. However, none were more significant or revealing of his character than the instances when he had the opportunity to exact revenge on King Saul, but chose mercy instead. These pivotal moments offered a glimpse into the depths of David's integrity and his profound reverence for God's will and the sacred covenant bestowed upon the Lord's anointed. David's first opportunity for retribution unfolded within the secluded confines of the caves of Enjadi. Saul, accompanied by 3,000 men, meticulously chosen from the ranks of Israel, was tirelessly hunting David, determined to silence him permanently, as fate would have it. During their pursuit, Saul entered a cave to seek respite, oblivious to the fact that David and his loyal band of followers were concealed deeper within its depths. Tension hung heavy in the air as David's men, sensing the magnitude of this moment, whispered urgently, their voices laced with the fervor of those who believed that destiny had presented itself. They urged David to seize this golden opportunity, to strike down Saul while he was vulnerable and claim the throne that God had promised to him. They argued that it was their duty to rid Israel of a king who had become consumed by paranoia and jealousy, a king who had turned his back on God's chosen leader. Yet David, demonstrating a wisdom and depth of faith that belied his years, refused to act rashly. He understood that while vengeance might offer temporary satisfaction, it would irrevocably stain his soul and violate the sacred covenant. He recognized that while Saul might be his earthly adversary, God remained the ultimate judge and arbiter of human destiny. Instead of succumbing to the allure of vengeance, David, moving with a quiet determination that betrayed no hint of his inner turmoil, carefully made his way towards where Saul rested, oblivious to the danger lurking in the shadow. With a swift, almost reverent gesture, David reached out and cut off a portion of the king's robe. Yet even as he did so, a wave of remorse washed over him. He knew that even this act, seemingly insignificant in the grand scheme of things, could be misconstrued, and it pained him deeply that he had been placed in this untenable position. He had been given the opportunity to vanquish his enemy, yet his conscience, bound by his unwavering faith, dictated a different course of action. As Saul emerged from the cave, none the wiser to the danger he had unknowingly faced, David called out, his voice echoing through the cavernous space, "My lord, the king." Startled, Saul turned to locate the source of the voice, and as he did so, David prostrated himself, his forehead touching the ground in a gesture of respect that belied the tumultuous emotions raging within him. Rising to his feet, he displayed the severed piece of Saul's robe, his voice resonating with a mixture of sorrow and determination as he said, "Today, in this very cave, the Lord delivered you into my hands. I had but to give the order, and my men would have struck you down where you stood, showed you mercy. I could not bring myself to raise my hand against the Lord's anointed." As the weight of David's words and the tangible proof of his mercy sank in, Saul was visibly moved. Tears streamed down his face, an uncharacteristic display of vulnerability from a king accustomed to projecting an image of strength and unwavering "You are a better man than I," Saul conceded, his voice heavy with a mixture of shame and newfound respect. "You have treated me with kindness, while I have treated you with nothing but cruelty and suspicion. You have proven yourself righteous in the eyes of God and men. Truly, I know now that you are destined to be king, and that the kingdom of Israel will flourish under your rule." Despite Saul's heartfelt apology and his acknowledgement of David's righteousness, the conflict between them was far from over. Destiny, it seemed, had other plans. Testing David's resolve once more. The second opportunity for revenge presented itself during a tense standoff in the desolate expanse of the Ziph Desert. Saul, relentless in his pursuit of David, had once again tracked his quarry to this desolate region. As night fell, enveloping the landscape in an eerie silence, Saul and his weary men made camp, unaware that danger lurked nearby. Under the cover of darkness, David, accompanied by his loyal nephew, Abishai, infiltrated the slumbering camp, their movements ghost-like as they navigated the maze of sleeping soldiers. They located Saul, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm of sleep, his spear planted firmly in the ground beside his head, a silent guardian standing watch over its slumbering master. Once more, the tantalizing prospect of ending this cat and mouse game once and for all presented itself, and once more Abishai, his loyalty to David unwavering, saw an opportunity to deliver swift and decisive justice. "God has delivered your enemy into your hands this night," Abishai whispered urgently, his hand gripping his own weapon. "Give the word, and I will strike him down with a single blow. He will trouble you no more." But David, his faith unshaken, his conscience clear, gently placed a restraining hand on his nephew's arm. Who are we to take a life that God has given and God alone has the right to take? Vengeance belongs to the Lord. If it is His will that Saul's reign should end, then it will be He who strikes him down. Instead of spilling blood, David opted for a different course of action, one that would prove his integrity and unwavering faith in God's plan. With a boldness that surprised even Abishai, David approached the sleeping king and removed his spear and his water jug, items that represented both Saul's authority and his vulnerability. With their prize in hand, David and Abishai melted back into the darkness, leaving the camp as silently as they had come. When they were a safe distance away, David called out to the commander of Saul's army, his voice shattering the stillness of the desert night. Startled awake, the commander and his men stumbled out of their tents, their hands instinctively reaching for their weapons, their hearts pounding in their chests. As the camp erupted in confusion, David revealed himself, holding aloft Saul's spear and water jug. "See for yourself, Commander," David's voice boomed across the distance. "I had your king at my mercy, and yet I chose to spare his life. I took only these, proof that I was here, that I could have ended your king's life if I had chosen to do so." David's act of audacious mercy sent shockwaves through both camps. It was a powerful message, demonstrating that David, even when wronged and pursued relentlessly, refused to be ruled by vengeance or hatred. He understood that true strength lay not in wielding power, but in wielding it with restraint, in adhering to a higher code of conduct, one dictated by unwavering faith and unshakable moral conviction. These pivotal moments in David's life, moments where he chose compassion over retribution, mercy over vengeance, would forever define his legacy. They revealed a depth of character and integrity rarely seen in human history, setting him apart as a leader worthy of respect, admiration, and ultimately, the throne that God had promised him. Thank you for following along with us today. Please leave a comment to share your insights on the story we covered. If you're passionate about discovering the Bible's deeper secrets, subscribe now and stay tuned as we explore this intriguing and sorrowful past.